Hi, everybody. Welcome to Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about Lord of the Rings.
Ooh, all right, man. A favorite film and book of mine.
Do you remember your first exposure to J.R.R. Tolkien's fantasy masterpiece?
Well, I read The Hobbit, and it was awesome. It would have been middle school. I think I read it at school just because I wasn't doing
Was
much.
it assigned in a class, or was this just
No.
okay?
When you go to middle school, it's really your first opportunity to have something that resembles a library. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Without
yeah.
going to the public library. And so, listen, I'm a sucker for cool art, and I was into Dungeons and Dragons at the time, and so I'm looking through the book rack, and here it is. It pops out. Of course, everyone had heard of this series of books, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, because if you play D&D, you just knew about them, even if you had read them. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to give this thing a whirl. I wouldn't say a huge reader, but I would read, and it was awesome. I loved, like I said, I really, really loved The Hobbit. And then reading the trilogy was a combination of fun and a slog because it was so confusing.
Yeah.
Everyone had 10 names. There were 50 million characters expand over like a whole world. I remember reading this thing and just trying to maintain a figure out what am I reading here? What's happening? How many names does Strider have? Like 10 names? It was confusing to me. I think I listened to it on tape at some point as well. And then the films came out, of course, and I saw the films, several times. I think the films, listen, I don't have the encyclopedic knowledge of the trilogy like you do. And I'm the first to admit that. I know you're really well versed in it. But as I would say a layman in the field, I thought the movies did a pretty good job of capturing, if anything, the feel of the books and the characters of the books for the most part. And I enjoyed the films a lot. I enjoyed the films more than the movies.
Wait a minute.
But of course,
you enjoyed the films more than the movies?
More than the books, excuse
Okay.
me.
You enjoyed the films more than the books, okay.
Right. But mostly because it was sort of simplified, I think, in a way. But I mean, it's just, when you read a Tolkien, he's so descriptive that you could see how this could have made a good film. I remember when I was reading it as a kid, I'm like, man, there's so much in these books about to set up the areas they're in and just talk about stuff that's going on. You could see how they could easily sit down and just say, okay, here's what he said about this. Let's put that, send that to a guy to have him make it, and here's the scene we need. So when the movie came out and they did a good job, I wasn't that surprised. Now, I know you're a huge book guy. I know you don't think that films are better than movies, I'm sure. But I mean, you like the trilogy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I read it for the first time also in middle school. Very, very similar to you in that I used to hang out a lot in the library because I was one of the cool guys. What can I say?
Yeah, I was just as cool as you.
And in between my sort of forays into Judy Blume and other,
I read all her books. Read every one.
I picked up this book and it had a cool cover. It was a blue, and I found it at a used bookstore, the exact same version that I have. It's the cheapest possible paperback you can imagine. It's fallen apart at the seams and stuff, but the cover art's very cool. It's in front of Moria with Gandalf, and he's tracing out the door entrance and stuff.
Yes. Oh, yes. Very super famous book cover.
Yeah. And I read it, and again, just like you, I was reading it, and I was like, boy, I'm getting through this thing, and I still am not sure what's going on. But it was the first time that I'd ever read anything epic where it wasn't just, working our way towards the climax and then here's the end of the book. This thing is like, it takes its time. Everything about Lord of the Rings takes its time.
It unfurls slowly.
And I remember taking, this was when I learned the word, like you're quaffing a flagon of mead. And I used to go down in the kitchen and I used to pour myself a mug of Ecto Cooler. And I would drink that thing and read Lord of the Rings and pretend like I was at the inn at Bree or at Rivendell or something like that. And like I said, I was a cool guy in middle school.
The funny thing is, Bo, now, did you read the trilogy before you read Hobbit or after?
I didn't read The Hobbit until, oh man, it was after the movies came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, I loved The Hobbit. I loved it. That was my book. And I remember when I finished that book and started reading the trilogy, I was like, wait a minute, where's the main guy from the other book? Well, he's hardly in this at all.
Right.
And that was a real letdown.
Sure, I can see that.
And the other, something about Hobbit was it was almost like a lighthearted. I mean, it was serious, but it also is sort of amusing in some parts. And the trilogy is a lot more adultish. Does that make it? I don't mean dirty. I just mean it was like more complex.
Well, the conventional wisdom is that Tolkien wrote The Hobbit for his kids when the kids were small, and he was writing for the kids when the kids were older. And the story of the publication of Lord of the Rings is fascinating because it was actually started before World War II, and it wasn't published until like 1951. So I mean, it had a production schedule like you wouldn't believe.
It was. I'm assuming that the Hobbit was a major hit.
Oh yeah, that was the only way that he could get Lord. Of course, his real goal was to not write Lord of the Rings at all. His real goal after writing The Hobbit was to write the Silmarillion, which is like the whole story. But the publishers were like, no, we can't publish this. It's too much. People can't handle it. And so he sort of pared it down and fit it into the story of the Lord of the Rings and added a bunch of appendices and stuff like that. The Silmarillion wasn't actually published until 1978, well after Tolkien's death. And his son, Christopher, who I believe is still with us, is in his 90s, really has done a lot to go back and republish a lot of his notes. There's an 8-volume history of Middle Earth, which is all of the sketches and early versions of the books and stuff. I remember when those books came out, and I was really intimidated by them, although I thought they looked cool, and now they go for big bucks because they've been out of print for a long time.
I've never read the Silmarillion. I'd say that's one I never read.
I've
read the trilogy and Hobbit, and that's it.
I've attempted I'm a huge Tolkien fan. I've attempted the Silmarillion 5 or 6 different times, and I can't get through it. It's too dense. It's too dense.
As much as I loved the Lord of the Rings films, I thought they were really good. I was anxious to see The Hobbit made, and man,
what a letdown, man!
And I'm more familiar with that book too than I am the Lord of the Rings. And man, I knew I had a bad feeling before it was ever made. I was like, man, they're gonna botch this because that's a harder book to keep true to.
If you're trying to stretch it out over 3 films, absolutely.
If they had made, because they had some of the parts there that could have made it good, and some of if they condensed everything they made into one flick, it probably would be okay. I wasn't super keen on some of the casting either, but that was a real bummer. And I have to say, I've not even watched the last film in that series. I was like, I can't handle it.
It was all I could do to sit through it. I didn't see it in the theater. But when I rented it with Eep, we would watch it, and it was like torture because I could go on and on about why I think The Hobbit is horrible. But when Peter Jackson comes out and says, yeah, I pretty much didn't care, that it's bad times.
It's too much to ask one man to do all that. 6 Tolkien films? No. Not that quick. Yeah. Not on that turnaround. This guy's the only human. He had to have been burnt out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Plus the fact that
it was at shotgun length. He had to do it.
Yeah.
And so
not to mention the fact that they wanted Guillermo del Toro to do it. He did kind of part of it, and then they brought in Peter Jackson to clean up the mess. Peter Jackson, incredibly wealthy beyond measure, probably not caring as much about this. There's all kinds of reasons why this thing was a bad idea. But we're not here to talk about The Hobbit, Aaron. We're here to talk about Lord of the Rings. But before we get into Lord of the Rings, let's talk about what's new over at everythingamiga.com.
Very good. So we had one submission this week. They submitted, and it was from our good buddy Harbonaut. And this time, this is interesting to me. I looked this over. This is called Chase HQ Revisited.
Ooh.
Boat. Now you remember when we did Chase HQ? And it was early on,
Right.
And so Harbonaut went back to mess around with it, and then he also. He was going to fool with the faces in here. Which did you read this thing?
I have not. This just popped up when I was right before I looked at it, so I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
It's definitely worth a look. It's funny. Harbonaut's an interesting character. I don't want to ruin it for you. There's some great pictures here. Just go take a look at this over at everythingamiga.com, and we thank Harbonaut for submitting this very interesting tale. You know, we love getting some submissions over at Everything Amiga. So if you've got something you'd like to see put up there, you know, send us a note, you know, and we can make it happen. You know, we love that sort of thing.
Absolutely. All right, Aaron, let's switch over to our YouTube channel.
All right,
what new videos have come out lately here?
Well, you know, we did a few things in the past week, but we should probably get into. So let me backtrack here to the last batch of stuff that we released here. So I believe you put up a couple of have we went through all of your gun games? I think we went through all of them.
I think the first thing up here is Pixels at Dawn, official moderator of the chat here on Twitch, and all around super awesome guy, chairman of the board of the Amigos Game Selection Committee.
Chairman.
He is of course Brutal Barracuda puts all these together. This is Pixels at Dawn's top 10 most played Amiga games, and this is quite the list. I had a look at this earlier. There's a lot of my favorites are on here. Of course, you got Pinball Dreams, you got Lemmings, you got Elite. It's a very, very, very good list.
It's funny how Pinball Dreams pops up on these things, and despite the fact that it was the first one, but I mean it had some great tables.
Yeah. Now I do take issue with the Settlers being number one. I don't get this one, Aaron. This one is not for me. But the rest of these games, I wholeheartily endorse.
People dig it, bud.
Yeah.
That's all you can say.
Yeah.
So let's talk about last week's R. Sinclair boat. We reviewed a very intriguing game, a new game just released last year called Drift.
Mm-hmm.
It's a drifting car game, and man, where the hell did this game come from, boat? Holy smokes! I couldn't believe this thing graphically. This thing's off the freaking charts, man. I mean, you've never seen anything on the Spectrum like this ever. This blows minds. Now, in terms of gameplay, not to be cute, but your mileage may vary.
Sure.
Depending if you are into drift racing or not. Some people are and some people ain't.
Mm-hmm.
I think this probably does a good job of making a game out of drift racing, but I sucked at it. So for me, it was a game that I sucked at. But man, it's worth the admission just to check out the prettiness of it and the sound, which is also, by the way, off the charts. Boat.
Mm-hmm.
Great music on that sucker. Let's get into. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and get into what I did here. I put out a video this week under the Sketchy Tech, which is me taking and building this new computer, which sits before me right now, and just me. It's basically an hour and a half of a doofus building a computer with a bunch of cool mod music playing behind me, with bumpers at the front and the end, of talking about my adventures there. So it's something you can stick in the background and ignore, or listen to the tunes, and just occasionally look up at the strategically shaved ape as I try to put this new computer together. It was
I like
fun.
how you're precariously balancing that board as you screw in the fan on the processor.
Oh yeah, only the best boat. You know my methods. Hey, you inspired the name of that show. Since you badmouthed my techery so much, I thought, I'm just gonna embrace Boat's pathetic slur.
I love it.
I'm just gonna jump in there and do it. Now, Boat, you released what I would say is a hilarious yet painful stream this week of you attempting to play this week's game, Lord of the Rings. And then at about the 45-minute mark, I don't want to ruin the fun, but things go a little south, so you switch over to the Super Nintendo version.
Right. Now, it's funny because, I switched over to the Super Nintendo version. The Super Nintendo version of this game, also horrible. So,
there you go.
So,
they bought you?
I actually went back to the Spectrum, or not the Spectrum, the Amiga version, and we're going to get into my thoughts on the game, but there was something that I discovered that made this game a little bit more playable that was towards the end of the video. So we'll talk about that here in a second. But if you are in the mood to watch me play this for the very first time, make sure you check that out.
Did you now the Super Nintendo version is not the exact same game?
It's not even close. It's a totally different game.
Yeah. I watched. I was like, this doesn't seem anything to do with the one we played. Let's move on to what we did last week on 1200 XL.
Okay.
A little kangaroo.
That's
action,
right.
Boatster. We went through the amusing tale of how Kangaroo actually got a release on the Atari 8-bit through Atari's basically Atari's like public publisher.
Yeah.
It didn't even go through an actual publisher, and it was with hilarious reasoning. We actually got to quote the actual programmer to tell us what exactly happened when he actually finished this game for the 5200. So that's worth a look. And we played some Kangaroo too. Hey, Kangaroo's a good time.
A fantastic time.
Last thing on the docket here, Boatster, the ever popular Amigos unboxing. This time out, our good buddy Graham W. Webke sent us some lovely stuff from Australia. In fact, I just received this from you yesterday. My course of stash, and the family went to work, descended on it like piranha or vultures when that came in the house, and we ate the crap out of it. It was great. So thank you, Graham, very much. And if you're down with watching the Amigos chow down and eat a bunch of crazy candy and stuff, that's what we didn't get to eat anything at the time, but you can see us open it up. I will say I did not shoot footage of me eating it yesterday and today, but I did.
I like watching you wring your hands in stereo on the video and in real life.
Yes. It's funny because I was just This is how weird this is, Bode. Okay, I want to go somewhere here. So you've got our video from last week up on the screen. Okay, so I was reading some other stuff to talk about the YouTube stuff. I came back and I saw us on the screen, and I kept looking at myself, and I'm like, man, what am I doing? How long ago was this video? And I didn't realize it was last week's video. And I looked off to the side. There's me. I'm like, oh man, I'm an idiot. So yeah, this is all confusing when you're not sitting right here beside me. It's very confusing.
I agree. Well, I'll tell you what's not confusing, Aaron. The Gamble Train. He's large, he's in charge, and he's ready to deliver this week's Amiga news.
Oh God. Okay, what's he got this week?
All right, Aaron. This week we're going to start off with, of course, a video not directly Amiga related, but from one of our dear members of the Amigos Discord community, the Macintosh librarian, aka Kate Fox.
Yes.
She's here with a new video starring everybody's favorite anthropomorphic classic Macintosh. That's a really hard word to say.
It is.
You should never attempt it. Mackie is back. It's like, what was that guy on the half moon that was the McDonald's star?
Mac Tonight.
Just like that. Not really. So, anyway, Kate's back. She's talking about Number Munchers this week. Aaron, did you ever play Number Munchers?
It's funny you should mention that, Boatster. We actually reviewed this on ARG Presents during Educainment Week.
Oh.
This was one that we looked at. I don't remember what format. This was Brent's game. I think he looked at the PC version, but I can't be sure. So we actually, not only did we have a cup of coffee with this, we played quite a bit of it. So when I saw she was doing it, I was like, oh boy. So yeah, this is actually a pretty fun game for kids. And I had a good time, but I will say, once you get to the higher levels of it, it is brutal. Brutal. I want to meet the man that could go through this game at the higher levels. It's super hard, but it was fun. We had a good time with it. And of course, Kate did a great job. She's got a lot of these videos are very clever.
Yes, absolutely.
I really dig them.
Yeah, very good. So, next up back into the world of the Amiga, we've got 10 Mark. Our buddy Doug is going over 15 kilohertz LCD monitors for the Amiga. Now, I didn't even know that they made LCD monitors that ran on this frequency. Had you heard of this before, Aaron?
I don't think I even bothered to think about it, to be honest with you. It never really occurred to me. So no, I guess not.
I haven't watched this, but this is, I guess, if you want to go directly from an Amiga like 500 or a 1000 without or not a 1000, but why would you need this, Aaron?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I had not, this popped out since before that's why I've got to see it. I usually watch Doug's stuff right away, but I missed this. This was slipped past me. However, one would assume that what he's done here is gone from the Amiga's display port to a VGA monitor, and this thing could sink down to handle it.
Right.
So that's what you would need it for.
Because I remember, I guess, before when I had the original House 500, this is what that GBS 8200 board did, right? Because it was an arcade board. It was designed to hook up an arcade board too.
What I would wager he's done here, okay, and again, I haven't watched this yet, is taking a cable that goes from has on one end goes into the display port on the Amiga, and the other end's a VGA port. There is no in between.
Right, exactly. And this is a review of a VGA monitor that actually can sync down to 15 kilohertz.
It's funny. I never thought about this, but now that I've got as I look around me here, just within arm shot, I've got like 6 LCD monitors, and they're all ancient.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I wonder if I could have done this, because now I've got this. I've got several SCART, and some of the stuff Rushi sent over. It's some crazy other stuff I've got to get the Amiga kicked out. So it's not that tough now. But I mean, at the time, man, I would have loved to have had this, and I probably could have went down to the surplus store and found a monitor just like that and used it.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good, Doug. I'll give you credit. I'm gonna watch this as soon as the show's over.
Yeah, he's come up with quite a few cool concepts. Last week was the USB on the Amiga, so I really like more of these kind of esoteric, why do it, why not type videos.
Also like that baby right there.
Who doesn't like a good baby?
Mm.
Let's talk about what Amiga Bill's been up to on Twitch lately, Aaron.
What has he been up to, Bo? I haven't seen much of the Billster. What's he been doing?
Well, this is pretty awesome. What he has done is he's taken an old Sony broadcasting camera. They call it a tube cam. And this is an entirely analog screen. So he's got the tube camera set up, and I'm trying to find a picture of it here. I don't think I'm going to be able to, but he's got an old school camera set up that's videoing him through an analog input. I think he's running that analog input somehow through an Amiga back into Twitch. Everything is on original hardware this week. So pretty incredible. Pretty awesome stuff. Amiga Bill, he's a cinematographer by trade, so he's just got tons and tons of old school equipment laying around. He always manages to inject some creativity into his streams, and I really enjoy that.
That's correct. I never would have I would have thought to do that. It's much like Doug's thing. It's like these guys are thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
I'll give them credit, big time.
Absolutely. So check that out. And in related news, Aaron, Amiga Bill has launched his Patreon service. So if you are a consumer of Amiga Bill's streams and his other content through the Guru Meditation, consider joining up with him. He's got some cool rewards, including some custom desktop wallpapers that he's putting together. So I always like to promote Amiga Bill and his stuff because he's one of the all-time nicest guys. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, and I think he'll do very well. He came through and came on our marathon last year, which was awesome. And we love Bill. He pops in the chat occasionally. The Guru, they've been around for a while. I think they came. He's been on the scene forever, but I think the Guru started right around the same time we did. Mm-hmm. And that's some great stuff. So yeah, I hope he does very well. I'm sure he'll do great and his content's off the charts.
Absolutely,
really good.
Yeah. All right, next up. The Retro Hour this week, huge week for the Retro Hour and the Amiga. RJ Michael, the creator of, I believe that is Intuition is what it's called. We always refer to it as Workbench, even though that's technically not correct.
Right.
But he is interviewed on the Retro Hour. This just came out, so I have not had a chance to listen to this yet. But apparently him and Dan, old buddies, so I'm sure he's a good guest to have. I know it was rumored that he was going to come to Amiga Ireland. He wasn't able to make the trip. So if you were looking to get some inside stories of the creation of not only the Amiga, but also the Atari Lynx and the 3DO, he started his career at Williams. Man, this guy's done it all.
Yeah, it's funny because the Lynx and the 3DO were both considered ahead of their time when they appeared, as was the Amiga, of course, and all sort of met similar fates.
Right.
I mean, they never really, all three of those things never really reached the potential that they were destined for.
Yeah.
And it's no fault of the engineers, the people that worked on them. It's just mostly marketing and
the guys at the top, management.
And it's funny, you can blame Atari, and you can blame Commodore, and you can also blame EA.
Right.
Those are the three culprits. You can pick out three people that screwed those systems right there.
Absolutely. So anyway, that's this week's Retro Hour.
I can't wait to hear that one. That one looks great.
And finally, this popped up. If you are looking for another kind of something to put on while you're going about your business, watching somebody take apart an old Amiga, Miss Mad Lemon has just released this. This is a disassemble and exploration of an Amiga 1200. And this is your classic, let's take this thing apart. I don't know what's in here. It looks like a lot of weird, jacked up stuff. Let's see what's going on. So I always enjoy watching these videos from time to time. And of course, Miss Mad Lemon, a major player in the Amiga community.
She has a nice style, very laid back. She's got the tea. She's got the nice tablecloths and stuff. She does this stuff on. Everything's nice and polite. It's fun to watch her stuff because she's not in a hurry, and she, I would never do this on camera, and I would never do it just for fun. I did it for so many years. Boy, these just like, man, I can't imagine. But I mean, it's fun to watch someone else do it because that way they've got to put it back together and make it work.
Yeah, and if they mess it up, it's not your fault. So
that's right.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's Amiga news. The gamble train is pulling back out of the station, off into the sunset. The lonesome whale disappears. Let's talk, Aaron, about Lord of the Rings.
Let's get into it, Bode. Now, I know neither one. Now, I was getting ready to say that neither one of us had played this before, but I know from watching your video, you actually had played this, right? I mean, sorta.
Yes, I have a story.
You want to go ahead and let's hear it? I
have a story. It's very rare that I have a story about any of these games. When I was in high school and I started playing Magic the Gathering, the real Magic, none of that, ball and cup stuff.
That comes up again.
Okay.
This comes up again. Okay.
So it was called Street Corner Comics. Okay, it was down by the Pizza Hut in that sort of depression down there. You know what I'm talking about?
I love that place. Yeah.
So after a couple years, the guy that ran Street Corner, I think his name was Steve. That might not be true. Chad would know if he's still in the chat, because Chad was right there with me. I'm actually glad Chad's here because he was there with me throughout all this. There were these guys. Rick, thank you. See, real-time follow-up from Chad in the chat. Rick sold Street Corner, and these two other guys, his friends, bought it. Okay.
Yeah.
And these guys were not cool guys. The first thing they started to do was just start smoking 24/7 in the store. Because this was in the 90s and you can still get away with that sort of thing.
That's good for your merch when you do that.
Right.
Get it all seasoned.
Exactly.
Exactly. Like a fine steak.
So apparently these guys' names were Matt and Mike. So anyway, they would play movies, like really movies that I was not into, like Dusk Till Dawn. Do you remember that movie, Aaron?
Oh, yeah.
That movie is not...
The first half of that movie's great.
That movie is not what you call a boat-approved movie.
No.
So,
no.
I didn't want to hang out in there anymore. But one of the things that they did when was that they basically brought all their crap from their house and put it out for sale. Okay? And a lot of this stuff was pretty cheap. And two of the things that they had a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff. Okay? And one of the things that they had was a Lord of the Rings role-playing book. Okay, so I bought that. And another thing that they had was this Lord of the Rings PC game. And I looked at the system requirements and I was like, yes, I can play this. Because I had at the time, I had an old, even when it was new, it wasn't a great computer. Yeah. So anyway, I brought this thing home. And I open it up, and I'm greeted with the game as you see it before you. I played this thing for probably 10 minutes, and I was like, well, that was a waste of money. Because there were no returns at the old Street Corner Comics. You know how that goes.
Especially something like that. Yeah. You're not going to get the return there.
Yeah. And so I put this away for several years until when I was a senior, I purchased a Macintosh Plus computer. Okay? And I thought, man, I need some games for this thing. I'm going to just write some disks from the PC on, and the Mac will be able to read them, no problem. I had no idea. So I was like, but I didn't know that the Mac had a special drive. It was those 880K disks. And I was like, and so I'm tearing apart my house looking for some. What are they? Are those like single density? Is that the name for those? I don't know. Anyway, the only discs that I can find are the Lord of the Rings discs. They're written on 880K floppies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, with little to no regard of to the game, I wrote over those bad boys with some files on the internet. I stuck them in the Mac, and of course, the Mac did not accept them. So I ruined the discs and was unable to do anything with my Mac. It was a glorious time.
Well done. And now I'm guessing you didn't keep the remnants of this box.
Right in the trash. Right in the trash.
Did you see this is the difference between me and you, Boat? Did it have the manual, the maps, all the accoutrements?
You know, I can't recall. I think that it must have, but it is sort of weird that I would have thrown it all away. But at the same time, it's not. When I went to college, there was sort of a purging. That's when I got rid of what, and it might have even been one of those yard sale things where my mom put stuff out. She might have said, "Do you want this?" And I said, "No." I had a Franklin Ace 1000. Or 2000, just like
you're
Flack.
Kidding me, just like Flack. Yeah. That's amazing.
I liberated it from the Hurricane High School band room. I don't know why I was in there.
What the heck was it doing in there?
I don't know. I had a C64. All that stuff went away. The only thing that survived the purge was my Mac Plus and my 1200 XL. So,
when you say went away, do you mean gave away, sold,
like
or
I said,
did you dump it in the garbage?
No. When I was in college, my mom would call me from time to time and say, "Hey, I'm having a yard sale. Do you want this?" And of course, when I was in college, I had other priorities. But
she sold it all.
Yeah. She probably sold it for 25 cents, you know. And
I was just wondering if she'd had gotten it sold or not. So that's something. That still sucks. But I mean, who knew then? Listen, I threw out stuff in that purge where I had to get rid of the old outbuilding. Mm-hmm. And a lot of old PC crap, because I thought to myself, no one's going to give a crap about old PC crap. It's old PC crap. No one plays old PCs. They suck. Mm-hmm. Well, little did I know,
all that stuff's coming back.
Motherboards and stuff now, it's ludicrous, man. I couldn't believe it. I was sitting on a freaking fortune, Boat. What are you gonna do? You know, sometimes you get lucky.
That's right.
That's an interesting tale, Boat. Every bit of that sounded like Boat.
Yes.
So you haven't changed a bit.
Not at all. Not at all.
I'll take the incredibly goofy plunge. Bam, you did it. You didn't think twice about it. So I had not played this. I shouldn't. I'll be this week. I'm the one. I guess really technically you didn't either.
No, I mean I gave it.
You owned
it.
You just didn't.
I did not play it.
So this came out. This is officially titled Lord of the Rings Volume 1. All right. Came out in '91, Boat, 3 discs, and was published by Interplay. The version I had was published by Interplay, but apparently also Electronic Arts were involved in the publishing of this. And developed by Silicon and Synapse. We've actually covered one of their other games. They really only did one other thing on the Amiga, that was Lost Vikings. But you remember Lost Vikings?
Well, you know what Silicon and Synapse turned into?
I don't. Was it Blizzard?
Yeah, they turned into Blizzard.
Yeah, that's right, because I remember that from Lost Vikings. Mm-hmm. This game is one of your classic multilingual specials where you actually get in the meat of the game. They made it pretty easy for themselves to kind of go in between countries, because it's one of those games that have most of the pertinent controls and whatnot are in pictures.
Well, you know, you say that, but there's tons of text too, and you wonder, and you wonder why they just couldn't have put the text in the menu too. Would it have been that hard?
Listen, I'm right there with you on that. I thought the exact same thing, but I mean, we've got those. In fact, both of us who looked at this week, same thing. You don't get anything.
There's no tooltips, that's for sure.
No, they don't give a crap about you. This is an ECS OCS joint, no problem there. Now this got converted, Vote. Now it's funny. This had releases on one of my favorites, the FM Towns Marty / FM Towns. It's always a party on the FM Towns Marty, and on the PC. And I actually have the PC hooked up right here. I fired this thing up and I played it on the PC and the Amiga and the emulator, the triple this week, Bo.
The trifecta.
That's right, buddy. So this was originally designed to be on the C64, but since the C64 had lost a lot of steam in '91, apparently they just didn't release it. Go figure. So there you go there. So what is this game? Well, this is you are leading the gang of hobbits to get rid of the ring in Mordor. That's the game. It's just like the books, man. It's got so it's a RPG style game. It's got an interesting interface where you can use the mouse to kind of tell your party where to go. That kind of what would you say? Sort of like a Diablo did the same sort of thing.
Yeah, it's click to move is
which it's no good. I hate that. Use the keyboard. The basis of what you can do in a game. This is another one of these weird games, Boat. Not to jump ahead, but where you can. It's got your standard buttons that you pick up, put down, fight, that sort of stuff, talk. And then it's also gets to a point where you can actually type in like it's a text game.
Yeah.
Another one of these weird games, and I didn't realize there were so many of these things, Boat. They were like that. Here's another one that comes up. Were you surprised when that became an option? I couldn't believe it. I was like, what?
Back in the day, I never played a game that had both. It was either one or the other. It was either like, King's Quest 1, which was all text, or Maniac Mansion, which was all point. So, it seems like that's a horrible idea. It seems like you're making things too confusing when you do that.
Part of me likes that. And much like little computer people last week, we did the same thing. Part of me thinks that's amusing, and the reason that I think it's amusing is because it does add and I'll be honest, I didn't stretch the legs of this parser to see what all I could do. You know what I mean? But I do like the idea that the possibility exists for you to ask a bunch of crazy questions and they could potentially stick a lot of information in there, and it also is sort of a wild card, in the game. But on the flip side, you get these games now that have like dialogue trees,
right,
where you just click. It's a lot easier.
Exactly. It's one of those things where at what point does the ability to be creative lead to frustration? Because if you've got a really kick-butt parser that can pick up on all the things you might want to ask, then that's cool. But if it's like Ultima 6 or Ultima 5 or whatever we did, where it's narrowed down to this very, very specific set of words that don't quite, it's just like, why bother typing job and not just have a button that says job,
Yeah. And this game has a lot. It's funny. This game sort of has its feet in two different times almost. Three really, because you've got like you said, there's a lot of proper text in the game that gives you some instruction. So that's sort of a modern thing. Then you've got the sort of no text button situation with the interface. Mm-hmm. Then you've got the text parser where you go. So it's almost like three different weird things put together.
Right.
Very unusual. So when you play this game, you get a nice intro where Gandalf comes in and explains the ring. Frodo gets the whole situation down, and then there's music, and it's not animated except for like I think there's one scene where Gandalf chucks the ring in the fire. There's sort of an animated hand.
It's definitely at this point we should talk about the enhanced PC version, which I don't know if you played or not, but they actually take.
I didn't play the enhanced.
They actually take clips from the animated Lord of the Rings film and put those in. Much more impressive than the beginning of this.
I saw that. I'd forgotten how well animated that was too. And the voices in it are good. I'm a big fan of those the old Lord of the Rings cartoons. I remember watching those as a kid and getting the crap scared out of me. The one with the Hobbit is real scary. It scared out. I was like, man, these trolls are gonna eat this sucker. But I agree. I did see, although it looked like the game was pretty much unchanged with the.
Once you start playing the game proper, aside from music and stuff like that, there's nothing different.
I played this on the PC, and it is identical, except it looks better and sounds worse. So
it's like
you go.
It's
but it does have like ad-lib sound or whatever, or sound by sound. So once Gandalf gives you the shtick, he basically says, listen, and assuming some of you have read Lord of the Rings books or seen the films, the plot of this is there's a ring, these hobbits have to get it back to burned in the fires of Mordor, because this ring is the ultimate door to power. This guy wants that, he's coming for it. All right, that's the super abbreviated version. So you've got your little buddy hobbits. Hobbits, these little tiny, almost like halfling type guys, and you've got to get your crew to Mordor. That's the goal. Now, to be honest with you, Bo, I don't know how. I'm assuming this only goes. I didn't play to the end of this. Obviously, I didn't. You're not even close. So I don't know how close to Mordor you get in this. I don't think you actually get to Mordor in this. Do you know when this ends, or off the top of your head?
I want to say that it ends at Rivendell. There is a guy, the guy that we're watching right now. We're watching a guy play the PC version, obviously, because this is a bunch of clips from the movie.
There are no playthroughs on the Amiga version. I couldn't find any. I've seen people play for about 10 minutes.
It ends after Moria. Pixels at Dawn says. But yeah, it doesn't. You definitely don't get all the way to Mordor.
And the funny thing is, they didn't release a Volume 2 on the Amiga, which we'll get to that in a little bit. So you start off in Hobbiton, and you're right in front of Bilbo's front door, and you are they've let you go. That's where you start. Your cursor on the screen is a little pointer, and you can click on a part of the screen, and whichever way that thing's pointing, that's where your guys are going to head that way. Mm-hmm. It's not what I would call. It's not the best in terms of using your mouse to move.
Well, again,
around.
this comes from a period. Well, really, if we're talking about 1991, the mouse was established. Oh, the mouse was still kind of maybe not established for everybody yet. And I know that at least with the Mac, like looking at Mac games, it was a big thing to have mouse-only control. And it not giving people an option to use the cursor keys was a real mistake. I don't mind having this as an option, but negotiating a game like this with cursor keys is much preferable for sure.
You know, it's funny. I played on the Amiga, on my 1200, and I put it on the emulator, and I don't remember even trying to use the arrow keys.
I did.
And on the PC, I used the arrow keys, and they worked great.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like that, because my mouse didn't work that well in DOS. So, anyway, start off at the village, and it turns you loose, and you've got some sort of loose instructions from Gandalf that tell you what to do. Get out of town, head out. When you bought the game, it came with map stuff, which I didn't have. Now, one thing I knew for sure on this one boat, I didn't even try to play this without the docks and crap. That was not going to fly. So I went and looked them up, because you have to know, this is one of these games where you've got to have the maps. Mm-hmm. If you don't have maps, you're boned, right? Tell the people what happened to you on your first run through.
Well, what you've got here is you've got you're in Hobbiton, in the Shire, and you are not. This is not your typical role-playing game town where everything is very compact and you can easily see everything before you leave. This thing is a scale model of actual Hobbiton. It's a very large, expansive area with vast screens where nothing is going on. Yes. You are supplied with a map in the instruction book that is essential. And part of the problem with Lord of the Rings, the game, is that they don't give you enough instruction at the outset. Even with the manual, what you have is not necessarily like you're supposed to be completing the events in the movie. This is an open world game. This is an open world game where you can literally go anywhere and do anything. And there are tons and tons and tons of quests that you can complete that give you, better stuff that you can use to progress further. If I would have known that going in, I would have had a much different experience with this game. Because if you start to think about it that way, then you're like, okay, I'm going to take my time and talk to people and do all kinds of... Okay, think about the book, all right? When Frodo leaves the Shire, he doesn't wander through the main street talking to people. He's trying to get out of town without anybody noticing, okay?
He doesn't help people with kids.
Right.
He doesn't look for a dog.
Right.
He doesn't look for pieces of stuff. He's getting the heck out of there because he knows bad things are coming.
Exactly. And so you can't play this game thinking that you're just going to follow the events of the movie, and they should have made that more clear from the get-go.
Yeah, I agree.
This game is extremely, extremely large. The amount of traversal that you do is extensive. And it would have been really handy to have a mapping feature. That would have been really nice.
Or just it'd been huge.
Yeah, and it would have been nice to have just some way to be able to track what you're supposed to be doing and who you've talked to. And a lot of these things came later on. The thing is, though, whenever you try and implement all of these forward-thinking gameplay elements and you don't have things like that to back them up, the game is aged extremely poorly. I can imagine that if you are inclined, back in the day, if you were inclined, like if you'd already completed Ultima and all of that stuff, and you were really into the role-playing scene, and you were used to spending massive amounts of time in games just to figure them out, then this probably would have been right up your alley. But even then, there are a lot of things that they don't have. For example, in combat, you go forever in this game without running into an enemy. I mean, it's not because you've got to get out of town.
Not really. It depends on what you do. Like, I'll give you an example. And you nailed it. First of all, you're dead on. This is very similar to Ultima, except that I think this is a little more approachable than Ultima because of they've modernized some things. I watched your video after I had tried this the first time, okay, and you did very similar to what I did. The only thing I did different was I did recruit my buddies. You know,
the second time I went back, you probably didn't watch that far, but my second playthrough, I did a lot of the things that I should have.
That be the first. I'm talking about your first, and you headed to the ferry. I was exactly what I did. Well, I didn't get it, and what you said is exactly what this is. This game, you don't have to be in a big hurry. Because you really don't want to leave the Shire until you've got some stuff. Like I went out in the woods. The second time I played it, there was a lady whose son had fallen in a cave, and I confronted wolves. I was probably 5-10 minutes in the game when I fought my first wolf. Well, the wolf ate my whole party.
Oh wow!
Because the hobbits can't do jack squat for damage. They're punching it.
Right.
You know, they got nothing. Well, I had to go back. I was like, man, what am I doing here? Why do my guys suck? I mean, I know the hobbits aren't ninjas, but come on. Well, it's because when you're in Hobbiton, there's stuff there to go get. You go back. You don't, like, I was like you. I was like, okay, he's outside the house. He's got his buddies. They're gone. Wrong. He doesn't have his buddies. He doesn't have jack squat. He didn't have any rage. He didn't have nothing. You got to go back in the house. You got to get stuff. You've got to go all over the village and get stuff. And while you're there, all of a sudden people are saying, hey, can you go do this? Can you go do that? There's this guy drinking over at the inn. Go talk to him. You know, you could spend a good amount of time just messing around in the village before you even leave Hobbiton. And as far as I could tell, there was no nothing to expedite you out the door.
This is your classic role-playing trope where it's like the world is in peril. You've got to go fight the evil, but first do these 15 side quests about various types of fruit. You know,
I don't think you have to do them, but I mean, listen, just from my experience, and I didn't get super far into this game because I spent a lot of time milling around town. I got to the ferry. I went across the bridge. I went to the Prancing Pony, whole 9 yards, but I didn't get to any of the awesome stuff like from the books. But I did do a lot of, go to this cave, go find this guy at the bar, go pick the lock on this trunk, this kind of stuff. And you're right. That doesn't seem like it's in line with the spirit of the book or the film, where you're getting the heck out of town because there's going to be some stuff there to come kill you. Now, and I will say, nothing ever came to kill me. I got killed by wolves.
The only thing that can kill you, and the reason why my game crashed, because when this game ends, it just goes back to Workbench, which awesome, by the way, was that if you don't give the key to Lobelia at the beginning of the game, because the first time I played, I was trying to be sneaky and I didn't take any of the main roads, but she'll catch up with you before you leave. And if you don't give her the key right off the bat, she'll take the sheriff comes out and then the game's over. So.
Oh yeah. It's funny. Your video made me stop playing this on the Amiga and go to the emulator because I could do save states. Because I thought to myself, I'm not going to sit here and devote, because this isn't a game where you just hop back in and go. No. Like it's a slog, and I'm like, I'm not going to get to a point where I've devoted an hour to this and then it's crashed. Screw that. So I started saving it early and often. It's funny. The game looks okay, I would say. It sounds okay. I mean, again, I don't think the game's anything to write home about graphically or audio wise. But having played this on the PC as well, the PC version of this runs so much faster, and that's one thing. You get around a lot quicker. Well,
here's the thing.
It runs really slow on the Amiga, even on 1200.
Here's what I discovered. This game, I was trying to click to move, And that's not the way to go. The way
you hold the mouse,
you got to hold the mouse button down. Yeah. It took me forever to figure that out. I didn't realize that, and so if you want to try this out, just please keep that in mind to save yourself frustration.
Yeah. The PC version also lets you use the keyboard. The funny thing is, good luck going diagonal in either version. That is, and how did they that's the controls on this are not good. No. We can agree with that, right, Bo?
Yeah, absolutely.
The controls aren't good. I did skip ahead. I did find a fellow who had played well ahead of where I was. He'd assembled a large party. So we should talk about how combat works and that sort of thing. It's kind of interesting. It's sort of brain dead simple, isn't it, Bo?
Yeah.
You've got your adversary. You take turns for whoever's in your party. You hit the sword button. It'll give you the choice of the attacks that are available, and then they do the attack. There's a hit point bar sort of on the side that tells you how much more damage you're going to have to deal to kill somebody and how much you can take. And it's okay. It's serviceable. I mean, I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I would have liked.
It's not exciting. That's for sure.
I would have liked to have seen more statistics. Like I want to know what I'm hitting for and all that kind of thing because it's a role playing game. But it's serviceable. This game gives you a lot of freedom in how you want to create with your party as far as like who's the leader and things like that. Yeah. So and I'm sure that a lot of that kind of thing plays out later on in the game. The combat is like you said, it's brain dead simple.
I noticed that when you were playing, and I don't know if you ever found the cause of this, but when you were playing it, the messages that would pop up would instantly go away.
Well, if you hold down the mouse button and you run into one of those and you let go of it, it will stay. But if you're going click, 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 then that click registers the thing coming up and going down.
Because I was going to say that didn't happen to me, and I was like, wonder what he was doing. But it was just the way you were in the button.
Exactly.
The fact that can happen though is no good.
Right. No good.
They should be a close X on the statement because those statements are often quite important in terms of location or what monsters you hear near you. Or flavor text.
It's the only thing that moves the game forward.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to boil this thing down a little bit, like Boat said, the guys that made this game, they didn't screw around, they didn't skimp on this world. This is a very Ultima-like huge world. It's huge. All right, it takes you forever to get anywhere. All right, but it's a huge world. That's the way they used to make them back in the day, like the Ultima style. If that is your cup of tea and you like the side quests and stuff, you should be happy with the game if you can get past the movement and the interface. If you're into Lord of the Rings, I thought the way they delivered the actual plot was pretty good. The stuff that I saw, I liked. So I thought it seemed pretty faithful.
Well, I mean, it's faithful aside, minus like most of the stuff that you do, at least in the early game, is it just... With a plot as rich as the plot of Lord of the Rings, I wonder why they had you doing all that sort of like dumb stuff at the beginning, like with the Lost Kid and stuff like that. Like, why pad out the most boring part of Lord of the Rings where you're just, bebopping around the Shire? You can jump right in and be evading the Black Riders and doing all this different stuff. And then when you get to Bree, maybe that's when that's when they give you the option to buy gear and stuff like that. I think they could have made this really cool by turning this into a thing where you have to evade other people as you leave the Shire. It can teach you some of the mechanics. This is definitely before where they used to introduce one mechanic at a time, to kind of teach you how the game is supposed to be played. But that would have been a good way to kind of learn the ropes, as you leave.
They absolutely don't hold your hand. That's for sure on this. I looked at it from a different perspective, Boat, and that was, what is it they say? My thoughts on this game matured or whatever over time. If you look at this game sort of like an EverQuest or something, which that's when it comes to these sorts of games, that's the game I'm used to. When you look at this game, like you're in no hurry, the main mission's going to be there when you get done, and you just go out and go out and fool around and explore and look for side quests and stuff. There's something to be done. There's some fun to be had there, but you have to sort of turn off your brain to the overall plot of the books. That where if you went out to see if little Jimmy fell down the well, one of the Wraith Riders are going to come and stick a sword up your hind, right quick, But if you ignore that, I think that I kind of like the side quests. I would assume that the side quests continue all the way through the game. Although it's I find it hard to believe that you'd be in like Mori or something in this side quest. I don't know what you could possibly be doing. Find the lost dwarf's gold or something.
I bet that's something. I guarantee you.
Do you think that would be something? I have to say. But I mean, overall, I mean, did you just flat out not like this game, or what do you think about it?
I didn't flat out not like this game. I thought this game has a lot of admirable qualities. I actually like this game more than Ultima 5. I think that it was easier for me to understand. Once I understood what was going on, then I could understand it. Ultima 5, I understood what was going on, but I still didn't understand it because I didn't read the 18 volumes of lore that's required to get into that series.
Right, I agree with you. I think this is an easy, more approachable, more friendly game than Ultima, despite the fact that Ultima, I'm sure it's, well, I don't know, I would say it's deeper, but I mean, we know there's an incredibly deep plot in Ultima, you know, that particular Ultima. But this one does seem more approachable. It's certainly it's more colorful and you know, so there's that going.
It definitely, it looks way better because Ultima 5 was still that EGA type thing. I think my main problem with this game is just the layout of. They should have made the Shire smaller and just gotten rid of all the empty space there. They could have condensed things and made it easier to navigate around town and find out what you need to be doing. You know, having the docks definitely helps. And again, this is really it's more of a PC role-playing game trope, though, to have stuff laid out in a more realistic fashion rather than to just have like stuff be more apparent. So I can't really fault the game for that. It's just not to my liking.
That's the way they used to do it back in the day, though. It was just that was part of the selling point of the game,
right?
You know, explore a world of 8 million metric miles or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Not metric miles, you know what I mean?
So it's metric miles. That's sort of a contradiction in terms. So anyway, I would say that this is a game that I would come back to, and I would not say that about Ultima.
Really?
Yeah, I would come back to this if in one of these alternate universes where it's like I can freeze time so I don't feel like I'm wasting my time playing this game. I would go back and I could see myself sort of exploring and talking to all the people. I do wish that the dialogue was better. I wish that the characters would just tell you what they needed. Like, you shouldn't need to ferret out what you need to know from everybody. You should just roll up to them. They tell you something and you say, okay, and you either write it down or whatever and you move on.
It just makes a slow game slower doing that. I mean, like I said, as much as I think the text parser is amusing, I agree. I'd rather just have the old tree to help you out. But yeah, I can understand that. You know, if I had the game disc for this, I might write over him too at this point. I don't know. I don't know if I want to go back. This is a slow kind of game, and this game, God only knows how many man hours it would take to sit down and go through it. I mean, like I said, it's playable to me, and this is not necessarily my sort of game. So I mean, I played it, I understood it, I could the party system. Hey, in terms of party management, so this isn't bad. But you know, for a game of this age,
not at all.
I thought that was cool. But it's not one I would necessarily want to go back to personally. Now, it's funny. I was reading the wiki for this boat, and I made sure to write this down so I mention it. There was a bunch of people that actually reverse engineered the game engine for this, and in 2009 they created a substitute version of this that they ported to modern platforms. So if you really want to play this, they've apparently got, according to Wiki, they've got versions of this for Windows, for Linux, and Open Pandora, which the Pandora we talked about the other day. It's a very short-lived open source handheld.
Oh, okay.
So kind of neat. Now you're probably asking yourself, where the heck's Lord of the Rings Volume 2? If I beat this game, where's that game at? Well, you better have yourself a DOS machine, a PC 98, or an FM Towns, because that's the only place you're going to play the second one. It came out in 92, and it was called Lord of the Rings Volume 2, The Two Towers, duh. And as far as I can tell, that was it. So it looks like they never put out the third one. So if you have an FM Towns, and actually, Boat, I should mention that the CoinOps does have FM Town support for if you want to go and ferret that one out. I'm sure you can go have a go.
Number one on the list.
There you go. So, but overall, it's it was okay. That's about as good as I could give it.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of scores from people from reputable publications, the Lemon folk, the Lemon. I know you love the Lemon folk. They weren't super keen on this one. 6.53.
Very low score from Lemon.
Yeah, it is. Amiga Action, as of January 92, 75%. Amiga 4-bit 72. Amiga Magazine gave this bad boy 5.5 out of 10. That's a fail. Amiga Power gave it a 63. CU Amiga gave it a 90. And 027 gives it 74. So what does that tell you?
Well, it tells you that they did a horrible job of explaining what you're actually supposed to be doing in this game. Because if they would have made their case from the beginning and just say, "Hey, you're living in the Shire. Do what you want. Talk to people. Uncover secrets."
Maybe this should have taken place before they found out about the ring.
Right.
Then you would have more reason to go look.
Exactly. Like, man, that's exactly right. It's like the first part of the game, the prologue. You're doing different things.
The lead up to the party.
Right, exactly. Man, you should be a game developer.
Hey, right there. Yeah. Read it. Now, I will say, Boatster, I read some of these reviews because I thought to myself, man, this game's getting killed. Killed. Well, a lot of these reviews said exactly what I did. And what they said was, we think this is a decent game, but it's so slow to start off that most people are going to give up before they get to the part where it gets interesting or becomes more like the book.
Right.
Bam. There you go. Enough said. So it wasn't just us, Bo. Did we get any Discord action Jackson on this?
Nada.
What's that tell you?
Yeah.
What does that tell you right there? Because remember how many we had last week? That tells you that people didn't feel like jumping into the deep end on this one.
That's right.
I looked this up on the eBay. This thing's going between $30 and $50 boxed. Some a little higher, some a little lower. It was floating around there, but it's going for some decent wad. One would assume that's a lot of people that just like the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. And
that's why the price is so high. But plus, apparently the maps and stuff in this are sort of tough to come by. So if you've got the box set with the maps and the instruction book and the quick reference card, hold on to it, brother. Hold on to it. Hold it close, and you can use that to play the game. And you could actually probably have a pretty good time with this. If you get the box version, it just has the discs in it, you're boned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Aaron, I do want to thank Brutal Barracuda, the Amigos Game Selection Committee member, for suggesting that we play Lord of the Rings, and of course the whole AGSC for voting on it.
So it was just Brutal's baby.
Absolutely.
Now, see, Brutal. If you ever watch Brutal's channel, he's a deep end sort of gamer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that doesn't surprise me at all. I bet he jumped all over this back in the day. I'm going to ask him about that.
Yeah. And before we close things up, I want to thank all the fine folks that have joined us in Twitch today, who we can join the recording live on Fridays around 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Macintosh Librarian is here. Pixels at Dawn Gaming, L. Curtis B. Bits O. Yama, Picard 2010, Hermsky, Edvin Helen, Rushi, MSX, Zorglub 45 is here. Paul Kitching. Thank you guys so much. And of course, Hat Chad in the house. Thank you guys for being with us today. We also want to thank all the folks that subscribe to us on Twitch. Still Adolescing, Spy Hunter UK 2016, Frodo NL, Retro Jerry, Creepy Dead Boy, Judge Dave, Mitsuyama, Old B, Sturgeon, Christian Russell, Wing Chun Wolf, Macintosh Librarian, Go Sub, Buck Owens, The Slow Norris, the Devil Bunny, that guy, Johnny Renegade, Rushi MSX, and I am Dan Forth. Aaron, last week we had a very successful Patreon song.
It was quite a treat, Bo. An audible and visual delight.
Yeah, it was Cheap Trick's Surrender. I read some things that called it the ultimate 70s teenage anthem. And I think I agree with that. It's a pretty good song.
I've been referred to as a Cheap Trick now and again.
I thought people referred to you as the ultimate teenage anthem.
Well, there you go.
So we want to thank all of the people that wrote in with the correct answer, and we want to congratulate them right now. Edvin Helen, first out of the gate with that one. Terry Hatfield, Paul Kitching, Eric Nelson, Tenmark. And Tenmark writes, and he says, "Hey John, Bunny Carlos is my uncle. Bunny Carlos is the drummer for Cheap Trick."
Oh,
Tin Mark's uncle.
He was my favorite member. He was the big tubby,
That's right.
like guy that dressed like Elvis in the one
He
video.
looked like
he was the best guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Us chubby drummers that stick together.
So
I can't drum.
Yeah, pretty awesome that's Doug's uncle.
That is great.
Yeah. We also want to welcome a new supporter, Joel Fuchs. Welcome, Joel. I did not get you in the Patreon song this week because I recorded it ahead of time, but you'll be in there next time, man.
Next week will be the first Joel.
That's right. I like it. I like it a lot. Let's talk about Patreon Song Challenge, Aaron. If you know this song, you can send me an email at john@amigospodcast.com, and I will read your name live on the air as a winner. So here we go. Here we go. All right, you ready? Yeah, let's go.
Luke Hudson, John Cook, Rich Drury, Roshi, Frodo in Hell, Soul Incisor, Tech Mage Zebedee's Magic Roundabout, Jurgen, Mr. Cola, Daniel Williams, Bernard Lucas, Jerry Dennington, Zorglub, Commodore Kid, Bjorkman Goodson, Sun Reflection, Simon Lech, Captain Crispy, Kilobytes and Caffeine, Mike W. Gary Heather Free Lunch, Kate Fox, David Pickford, Cameron Armstrong, Andy Jones, Lobsterminator, 10-minute Amiga Retrocast, Bernard Quinn Retro Man Cave, Tim Drew, Simon Rose, Joseph Harrison, Kyle Eder, Rob O'Hara, Matthew Laramore, Andy Craig, Sean Zobarkbit, Roland Burke, Andrew Monk, Show the Zombie, Leaf Killand, Alan Kebab, Checote, Levelord, John Marshall, Matthew Perron, Ricky DeRocha, Creepy Dead Boy, Figgy CTZ, The Slow Norris, Stefan Sorgard Mortensen, Edvin Helen Blindo 75, Christopher Hassel, Ravi Abbott, Chris Foles, Dreamcatcher, Lauren Giroux, Graham Febb, Key Adam Battersby, O'Brien's Retro and Vintage, Gary Huckasey, Brian Jones, Paul Harrington, Duncan Styles, Tapes from the Crib, Josh Nan, Adam Bradley Rule, Jonas Rullo, THC, Eric Nelson, Kim, Tommy, Hombuchstadt, Daniel Bingston, Brutal Barracuda, Darren Coles, Jason Warrens, Pixels at Dawn, and Kjolbjorn Barman.
I love the glance at the end. The glance of self-satisfaction you get to share with yourself.
That's right. That's right. So,
horrible.
Again, if you know the answer to this week's Patreon Song Challenge, john@amigospodcast.com. Aaron, next week, we're going to take a look. It's time to hit the lanes. You know,
bowling?
Yeah, Venture Lanes. That was the one in South Charleston, right?
I believe so.
They closed. They're all boarded up. They closed down.
That sucks, dude. That's horrible.
So,
although I was more of a Nitro guy, but yeah, whatever that was.
Town
called.
and Country. Nitro, yeah. I think that one's over by the Moose. That one's still open. They still get some action.
I used to go to TV tapings over there when Rich's dad would bowl on the Channel 3's bowling show.
Oh,
he used
man.
to bowl on that thing. Yeah, man.
That's awesome. That's where I played most of my arcade games, was at the bowling alley.
Yeah, think about live studio bowling. When are you going to see that again? Never. That's never going to happen.
Well, next week we're going to take the Amiga lanes out for a spin. We're going to play Strikes and Spares.
Okay, man. Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah, been a long time since we did a bowling show. So, thanks.
We ever done one?
That's a good question. I think that we have. Didn't we do like monkey bowling or something like that one time? Elf bowling? Isn't that a thing?
I don't know.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Until then, adios.